Hey everybody, I'm here today with a review of Marie's charcoal, which I have here in the box. I ordered it off Amazon. I have not opened these or used these yet, so you're going to see firsthand my initial first impression of these. This was a request from a viewer because my usual charcoal, which is General's charcoal, isn't available in all countries. So this looks like an option that's easier to get. I'm going to be testing these with my usual AFMAT pencil sharpener. If you want to know more about this amazing pencil sharpener, check out the links in the comments, and on just some paper that I'm really used to using so that there aren't a bunch of different variables that I'm testing here. The only difference is going to be the Marie's charcoal, but I didn't see any white Marie's charcoal, so I'm going to test it both with my usual General's white charcoal pencil. That way, if there's any variable, it's just the Marie's. And then I'm going to test it also with a Conte white pencil. That way, maybe that's something that's a little bit easier to get in other countries. Let me know in the comments below if there's another white charcoal or a white pastel pencil that you would prefer I review, and I will check it out. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open these up, give them a test, and see how they work. Okay, we're here at the drawing board. I have some paper to sketch on, and I'm just going to start off by just sketching, just making some lines and shading and seeing what happens. I'm going to start off with, this is the neutral pencil. So I'm making really light marks here. I'm going to shade with it, press down a little bit more, kind of see what happens. All right, yeah, it's looking really nice. I'm going to do a few more of these because my plan is I'm going to mix in some white into them and kind of see how they react when I smudge. So, you know, I want some variety here so I can experiment and play with it a little bit. Hatch over that one a couple different directions. And I'm going to label these with an N for neutral. All right. Now I'm going to try out the soft. So again, some light marks here. Actually, wait, I've got one that's sharper. All right, let's just shade a little bit. Put an S for soft there. And I do have a General's charcoal pencil with me. So let's make a little comparison. I didn't bring a soft because I don't really use them that much. I'm mostly using the medium. So if you want to, let me grab this sharper one. Neutral, there we go. So if you want to just see a visual comparison between the two, this is more of that shiny paint. This is like a matte, more grippy finish. Definitely there's something different there with the wood pulp, and I feel like there's a larger core of charcoal in this one. So it's a thicker core in there. So maybe if I actually hold up, so yeah, you can see there, I don't know how much that is, maybe 0.5 millimeter, but there's just a little bit of a thicker core there compared to the Generals. And I'll just shade a little bit here. I'm going to put a G for Generals. So this is the medium. Now I know that here it doesn't look like there's a lot of a difference. You know, if I was looking at this, I would be like, I don't know what's the difference. I do feel that this one is slightly harder than the soft. Like I can feel a little bit of a difference, even though it doesn't look dramatically different. And I feel that the General's medium is closer to the soft here. I feel like this neutral is just a little bit harder. So if we do a line of the neutral one compared to the General's medium, you know, it's very slight, but to me this is a little bit gray and it's just leaving less pigment down there, and the General's is a little bit fatter. And then if we bring in the soft one for a line, you can see it's darker like the General's. So I feel that there's some consistency there. So for me, this would be a really good set because I'm usually using in the General's medium and hard, and the soft and the neutral seem to correspond pretty well to the medium and the hard. So now the question is going to be, what about when we compare, because this is where I notice differences a lot within different brands. What happens when we try and mix the black and white together? Because I find across different brands, if I'm just using the charcoal by itself, it's not a big problem. But once I start to add the white in there, some brands, it's like the binder that they use just gets a little bit tacky and a little bit gummy. So that's what I'm really curious about, is what happens there. I'm going to start with the General's white charcoal pencil because I already know how this works. So I know it works well with the General's. We'll see how it works with the Marie's. So I'm starting here with the General's so that you can see what it looks like when it blends together. Maybe I'll even, do some blending on top of this, but let's see how it works into each of the Marie's. So you might be able to notice here that I'm having to work it into the charcoal a little bit more because it's like it's not picking up, and it's also not doing it quite as evenly. It's like there's a little bit of these little pockets where it's not sticking. So it is getting a little bit gummy, like I mentioned, that I find with different brands. Why I usually prefer the General's. Something else interesting here that it looks like the camera's picking up on, but the General's turns a little bit cold, like a little bit bluish, and this is feeling warmer when the two mix together. Just kind of interesting. Let's try it with the soft. So I'm having a little bit of the same problem there, that when I'm going over the charcoals, everything feels really powdery and smooth and fluid. And when I'm going over the Marie's, there's a little bit of tackiness, and just, the thickness of the charcoal underneath really, really impacts how much the white is going on top. So what I suspect is that while with the General's, you can usually layer a lot if that's what you're going for. Like if you are keeping things separate, if you are keeping your shading in the shadow and your buildup of the white and the light side separate, you're not going to have this problem. That would be a case where you're using the paper to act as your midtone or your local value or something like that. Or if you're using white paper, you're not going to be necessarily running into this unless you're building up a lot of the black charcoal. So yeah, that's what I'm suspecting, is that it's just going to be a little bit more difficult to layer a lot with the Maries. Certainly it's not unusable. You know, if you're not making a ton of corrections and not changing your mind a lot and going back and forth, this is probably going to work just fine for you. Now let's try it with, I've got a Conte white pencil here. So let's try that. I'm going to try it in all of them as well and see what the difference is and how that works. Okay, so it's really, really difficult to get it to stick on top of the Maries. And that is just something that I find with Conte. I don't use Conte a lot because I like them to mix together. I like the black and white to mix together, and I just find it's not really that friendly for that situation. So let's see with the generals. Okay, also not picking up very well over the generals, so we can blame this on the Conte pencil rather than the Maries. And even the same with the soft. It is just really, really difficult to get this white to show up on top of that soft. Whereas, I mean, with the generals, you can just about cover up anything that you don't want with white, you know, within reason. I mean, at a certain point, it's not going to work, but it's just so forgiving working with the generals. So let's kind of smear this stuff around and see how it acts with smudging, smearing, and let's try erasing too. So I just have some paper towel here. So there's the neutral, nice and smeared. I'm going to smear both of these too so that we can see what happens when we try and layer more. Now I'm being scientific. I'm going to trade out this for another one so that I'm not getting the binder, like contaminating the binder between different testing sites here. And definitely you can see the soft is darker, and wow, a lot of this white on top of the charcoal just disappears. And a fresh one for the generals. All right, now let's start building some stuff and see what happens. I don't think much is going to happen with the Conte, so I'm not really going to come back to that. But after I've smeared, how does this now go over? And that goes over really nicely over the Maries. That's working really well, actually. And that was just with a paper towel. I didn't do anything special there. Okay. So I would say that is working pretty well. If you're incorporating, you know, smearing and blending into your drawing habits, then actually I think the Maries will work okay for you, especially if on that last layer you're not incorporating the black and the white very much together. And again, I'm just noticing that this looks blue and this looks neutral, you know, and this is maybe kind of in the middle. It's not, it is warm. It's warmer than the generals, but maybe even that neutral one is a little bit warmer than the soft. So that's kind of interesting. Now let's see with erasing. I've got a kneaded eraser here, and then I have a mono eraser, and we'll just try both of them, see how it works. And the neutral is actually not too bad there. Got a little bit of erasing going, and I can still see a little bit, but for charcoal, that's really pretty good. For compressed charcoal anyway. Vine charcoal and willow charcoal, those erase really easily, but compressed charcoal, which is what the Marie's is, often doesn't erase very well at all. So I would say the erasability of these equal to the generals. How about after it's blended? That is definitely what I would typically expect. So I would say these are on par in those terms. I'm just curious, once it has the Conte in it, I feel like the Conte does affect the erasability just a little bit. Okay, so the verdict with these Marie's charcoal pencils is that they are really pretty good. If you don't have generals available to you, you can't get them wherever you are. I do think that these are pretty good. I don't remember the price point that they came in, but they seemed not too expensive and not incredibly cheap either. And they work very similar to the General's charcoal pencils, with their version of soft being equivalent to the General's medium and their version of neutral being equivalent to the hard General's charcoals pencils. The only differences that I'm really seeing are, number one, that these Marie's pencils are a little bit warmer in tone in comparison to the Generals, which are a little cooler, and that's neither a positive or a negative, it's just a difference. And then the only negative that I'm really seeing is if you really want to layer some white and black charcoal together and mix it together kind of like paint, the Generals definitely does a better job of that. It doesn't mean it's impossible with the Marie's charcoal, but wiping at it a little bit before layering seems to help, because otherwise the white on top doesn't seem to stick very well. If you give these a try, let me know your opinion about them in the comments below. Let me know any questions that you have about them. And if you have a white charcoal pencil that you would like me to review, or a white pastel pencil, let me know that as well so that I can grab one and give it a try. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time.